Development Solutions Network for Australia, New Zealand and the Pacific. I'm thrilled and honoured to be part of your conference today on the role of universities in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals in Afghanistan. To me, this is a very important topic, and I'd like to congratulate Kateb University on their leadership in organising this conference. I've been asked to speak about how universities can contribute to the SDGs, so I'd now like to share with you my presentation. What I'd like to do in my talk today is give you an overview of the role of universities in achieving the SDGs. As I hope you will see, universities can contribute to the SDGs in many important ways and already do a lot through their usual traditional activities. But to achieve the SDGs, we need universities to implement activities that go beyond business as usual, in particular in teaching for the SDGs and research for the SDGs. So I'll look briefly into what universities need to do differently in these areas and give you some examples of how we implemented these ideas at my university. However, I'll barely be able to scratch the surface on these topics. In the last couple of years, there has been an enormous amount of activity exploring the role of universities in the SDGs and developing new tools and resources to facilitate and accelerate action. So to finish up, I will also give you some suggestions for where you can go to find more information. The SDGs, which you've been hearing about all morning, represent really complex and interconnected challenges that the world has not been able to solve for a long time. Universities have considerable and unique skills and expertise that can help solve these challenges, and we have an obligation to use them to help lead the local, national and international response to achieve the goals. The SDGs framework recognises the special role universities have in several goals and targets that directly relate to general education, preparing students for employment, capacity building, research and innovation. However, university expertise is core to solving all society challenges, so universities contribute indirectly to all the SDGs. In my view, the SDGs cannot be achieved without universities. So how can universities contribute to the SDGs? This slide provides a very condensed summary showing the many different ways that universities can contribute through all areas of the university. University research is critical for providing basic knowledge, evidence for policy, solutions, technologies, and innovations that help solve the SDGs. General quality education is crucial to the implementation and achievement of all the goals. But university teaching can also provide students with the specialised knowledge, skills and motivation to help them become SDG problem solvers. Universities are often large entities and can have significant influence on the society, economy and environment within their campuses, communities and regions. Therefore, universities can make a big contribution to the SDGs by ensuring their policies and practices reflect the intentions of the SDGs. And finally, universities can leverage their unique position within society to bring different sectors together and support good national policy making, something which today's conference demonstrates beautifully. I hope you'll recognise from this summary that universities can contribute to the SDGs in a huge number of ways, and also that universities already do a lot of these things already through their core usual activities. However, there are a couple of areas where universities need to go beyond what is considered usual practice. And these are teaching for the SDGs and research for the SDGs. We will go into these in a bit more detail next. As I mentioned earlier, the SDGs represent very complex challenges. To address them, we need people and organisations that can operate in new, more collaborative and interconnected and systemic ways. This is recognised in SDG 4.7, which calls for all learners to acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development. This requires universities to provide learners, regardless of what they're studying or their profession, with knowledge, skills and motivation to understand and address the challenges of the SDGs and empower them to take action. The knowledge includes things like understanding of the SDG framework itself, as well as more generally understanding the major sustainable development issues facing our world. Teaching for the SDGs also includes a wide range of cross-cutting skills, many of which were originally identified by the fields of education for sustainable development and global citizenship education, but actually go beyond them. They include, for example, systems thinking, collaboration, communication, cross-cultural engagement, entrepreneurship, design thinking, critical thinking, ethical thinking, social and emotional learning, and so on. These are not generally actively taught at universities, and if they are, it is often to a small number of students as part of something like a sustainable development course. The SDGs requires us to mainstream teaching these to all learners in the university. And I'm deliberately using the term learners here rather than students, because universities have access to many other kinds of learners beyond formal students, including people in other sectors, the local community, and even university staff. Some universities are starting to grapple with what teaching for the SDGs means on a practical level. The general conclusion so far is that there are many different ways to do this, and it is up to each university to develop a suitable approach. For example, there are multiple channels through which the SDGs can be taught. The formal curriculum is just one of them. Teaching the SDGs can also be effectively delivered through other channels, such as co- and extracurricular activities, executive education, and community outreach. And while there are many channels, there are generally only two main approaches to teaching the SDGs, either creating specialised courses or activities specifically around the SDGs, or integrating SDG knowledge and skills into existing courses or activities across other disciplines. There are also several key elements that have been identified to strengthen SDG teaching, such as linking the SDGs to student lives or what they're studying, giving students opportunities to participate in solving local SDG challenges, for example, on campus or in their community, and bringing in experts from other disciplines and sectors to help teach the SDGs. This is a very high-level overview of teaching the SDGs, and I'll provide some resources at the end for people who want to explore this further. Before closing off this topic, I wanted to give you 3 brief examples of how my university is starting to implement these ideas. Just remember that there are many other ways to do it, and each university needs to find its own path. The first example is an extracurricular program called Leave No One Behind. It is a social entrepreneurship competition for students to develop a solution to one or more of the SDGs, such as a new product or a community program. It builds student literacy in the SDGs and fosters innovation and entrepreneurship. It's been a huge success with students, and they developed some great ideas. We also provide a Leadership for Sustainable Development stream as part of a cross-faculty Masters in Environment and Sustainability. The stream aims to equip students with everything that's needed for them to guide, influence, and lead the development of positive social, environmental, and economic solutions to the SDGs. Finally, we also offer a leadership program called Transforming the Future, specifically for business school students, on how businesses can make a positive contribution to solving global challenges. Let's move now to research for the SDGs and what universities need to do differently in this area. As I mentioned earlier, research at universities is fundamental for the successful implementation of all the SDGs. For example, it can help with understanding the basic challenges, localizing the SDG agenda, developing pathways and solutions, developing and incubating technologies, supporting the implementation of the SDGs, for example, through behaviour change approaches, and helping with developing indicators for monitoring the SDGs. While traditional disciplinary research is very important for the SDGs, if we really want to solve the complex SDG challenges in the real world, we need research that leads to action. This requires universities to support newer and different research approaches and to work actively to bridge the research policy divide. For example, through interdisciplinary and integrative research, developing and undertaking the research in partnership with organisations that will be implementing the actions, such as governments and businesses. mission-oriented research that identifies specific challenges and brings all the relevant stakeholders together to solve them. And research specifically on the SDG framework, which is very new, and how to help governments and organisations implement it. Here are 3 very brief examples of research for the SDGs from my university. There are many, many other things universities can do. The SDG 6 working group is a cross-sector group of water experts that we brought together to look at how monitoring and reporting on SDG 6 in Australia can be improved. Land Use Futures is a big and complex project that looks at how SDGs around sustainable agriculture, climate change, biodiversity and water can be solved simultaneously, so we can provide healthy food for a growing global population while achieving net zero emissions. And finally, Social Systems Evidence is a new initiative that is creating a free online repository of research evidence on what works to address the SDGs in a way that is intuitive and easy to access for policy and decision makers. I've covered a lot of topics relating to the role of universities in achieving the SDGs here in a very short time, but still barely scratched the surface. So here are some resources for those who want to learn more. Firstly, I'd like to recommend a guide we produced called Getting Started with the SDGs in Universities. This is a very practical and concise guide and provides a great overview of how universities contribute to the SDGs, a step-by-step process for engagement, and tools, case studies, and resources to inspire action. For those interested in looking more deeply at teaching for the SDGs, some useful organisations to look at are the SDG Academy, SDSN Youth, UN Prime, which stands for the Principles for Responsible Management Education, and UNESCO's pages on the SDGs. And for those interested in research, a good place to start are the Sustainable Development Solutions Network itself, or SDSN, and Future Earth. I will finish here. I hope this has been a useful overview of the critical role universities have in the SDGs, and has maybe inspired you to think how you can contribute to the SDGs through your own work. I wish you all the best for the rest of the conference and look forward to hearing about the outcomes. Thank you very much.